Good afternoon, everybody. My name is David McGee from the IMI, and you're very welcome to this afternoon's webinar. I'm delighted to be joined by Emer Burke. Emer is a Director of Business Partnering and Talent Development in Deloitte. And Emer is going to run through a session with you around the latest human capital report that Deloitte have produced. Just from a bit of housekeeping, there is an ability through Zoom to go through the functionality to actually post some questions, which we will take time at the end of the session. And really looking forward to it. This is our third webinar we've run with Deloitte in connection with their human capital report. And today we're going to focus on the future of workforce, and that's just one of the three categories that the report focuses on, the other two being the future of organizations and the future of HR. So I'm really looking forward to the session. It's going to be about half an hour. Emer will walk you through the framework of this session, and then we'll take some time at the end to do some Q&A. This session is being recorded, so we will send on the recording, which you can then consume again or share with colleagues or anyone in your network. Okay, so without further ado, I'll hand you over to Emer. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So hello, everybody, and lovely to join you all this morning. Thank you so much for taking time out to listen to us. As David said, my name is Emer Burke. I'm a director in our talent and learning team in Deloitte. What we want to do this morning is this afternoon rather, is share with you just a brief overview of our human capital trends, so you can have, we can share as much as we can today. So just to talk you through the evolution of Human Capital Trends report, some of you may already, as Dave mentioned, have joined us in the past few years sharing the details of those reports. We actually started these reports 9 years ago, linking up with our global firm. What we do is we go out and ask a survey of some questions to HR professionals. We also ask them to CEOs and business executives. 9 years ago, we started this survey. It was very much a survey for HR. We wanted to look at the human capital trends and issues, but very much through a HR lens. Some of the topics at the time you may remember around performance management, learning, and other HR functionalities. However, about 5 years ago, we switched from a HR-only focus and started talking more about the organisation and how the organisation is, talking about a network of teams there and how the changes of the organisation that needed to happen. We talked a lot about the C-suite and how we didn't get enough attention at the C-suite for these people, human capital trends. Last year, you may remember, we started to talk about the idea of the social enterprise. That's not just a business enterprise, but also recognizing what's happening in society. The human capital started, as I said, about a back office HR issues, but now they've completely shifted, and we're talking about the organization that recognizes the society as well. So, what's been happening since we last spoke in 2018? So you can see here that being a social enterprise is not just about our corporate social responsibility. It's more recognizing that our organizations no longer are the traditional organization that operating in siloed fashion. And you can see there the axes around the functional and symphonic, right, the harmony there versus our enterprise and our ecosystem. So we know now that everything is very visible in an external environment. You only have to look at social media, you only have to look at some of the branding and social branding that are happening around organizations to know how important that is now. So we know that if you're not engaging with your external ecosystem and managing that, your message will fall flat. So we're talking about the increased collaboration around technology, we're talking about increased engagement online, and what that lends itself to is the social enterprise. So the social enterprise, I'm going to give you, is here to stay. And what is it? Well, it's actually an organization whose mission combines both the revenue growth and profit making with the need to support its environment and the stakeholder network. So that's very much a change from our traditional model that we talked about in relation to the profit-making bottom line. We now know we have to listen, we have to invest in our people, and society is now having a direct influence in terms of organizations' brand and attracting talent to them as well. The good news is organizations are responding. So social enterprise is not just, as I said, the corporate social responsibility. It's about engaging with external ecosystems and working together more harmoniously. So you can see again about the traditional organization was very much purpose-led, and individuals now we know have much more powerful voice. Again, I refer to social media, I refer to the accessibility of technology. People are telling us they don't trust the government. Technology continues to challenge our trust. For those of you who from the talent and learning professions may have been at the CIPD conference last week, the whole conference was centered on trust in a digital era. So we know that digital and technology is challenging trust to people. And because of that, we are saying we need this, organizations to be more social enterprise. The good news, again, organizations are listening and they're responding to that purpose. However, what we're saying from our research is this does not necessarily benefit the individual. To benefit the individual, you need meaning. So why is meaning so important? So again, we talk about if you're a social enterprise, you need to engage. I mentioned about engaging with the external environment, responding differently. And we talked about this a lot last year as well. Again, you talk about there the rise of the individual. Individuals now have more power and more voice. We know that their trust is declining in both government and technology. Technology is actually scaring some people. It's coming in fast, it's changing, but people are have a fear around what that change will bring. And what that means then in terms of decline of the trust in government as well. So we need to refocus and we need to bring back the human identity in terms of all of this change. The external influences are now becoming more acute than ever and is forcing us all to rethink our perspectives on work. So purpose, as I said, is really important, but it's all now the talk about is all about the meaning. So how do organizations bring back meaning into work? Well, what we talk about, and from our research, we talk a lot about Maslow's hierarchy. So a lot of you will talk about this, about so we're using this to help us define what meaning is. What it does is, in terms of our research, it tells us there are areas that are gaps that our survey has validated. Creating a sense of belonging, creating a self-esteem. So I'll just share here. How do we define meaning? So again, just to reference what I said about the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we start first with the physiological needs. Now, that's not where meaning is found, but still it's important to reference. The second one there is around safety. Safety in the context of work is very important and does translate into around job security. However, it's not necessarily where, again, meaning is going to come to. From our clients, we know there are certain pharmaceutical industries, hospitals, healthcare, that is absolutely important to have those. But for a number of our clients, that's not the be-all and end-all. The next one, though, is in relation to belonging. So we know with belonging, we know now we have a huge number of our workforce changing into alternative work models. We have contractors, we have gigs, and we have a number of different things. The traditional permanent role is changing. So we wanted to talk about that, and this is where we absolutely see a gap. But in terms of how it links back to the meaning of work, it's important to reference. The next two then are around esteem and self-actualization. So esteem references about how am I getting value and reward from my work? And I would ask the question then, if you were to ask your people, in your organization, do they feel valued in terms of the work they do? Or how do they define how they're valued? I think it'd be a really interesting question to ask your teams and see what the answers are. Unfortunately, our data says that that's where the gap is in organizations at the moment. The last peak there you can see is self-actualization, and this references to learning and development. Again, our data would say that a number of organizations said there wasn't enough funding and enough investment in learning in our organizations. What that means is that if we're not investing into people's careers, their livelihoods, they're not getting a sense of meaning in the workplace. So as I said, they're the three areas that we saw a gap in terms of bringing that into the workplace and bringing it to life. So I'm assured that the question a lot of you will have is, what should organizations do? That's great to have the theory, but what's the practicality and what can we do? So what we're trying to talk about here is reinventing with the human focus. So first off, we'll start with the how. So how do I go about that? So reinvention is going to be a big change. There's no two ways about it. We do need to absolutely reinvent processes, programs, ways of working with technology. That is the most important thing here. Why? Why are we doing it? It is absolutely all about the people. But we are not focused on the human in spite of technology. Our data and our research shows that it's absolutely essential that we bring people along with the technology. We know that productivity is not just technology or people, it's actually the combination of both. So we want to make sure that individuals are adopting that technology and further enhancing their productivity within our businesses. And where? So again, referencing where we went with the human capital trends, we know that this is not just a HR issue. We know this is not just a C-suite issue. The idea is the workforce and where we need to focus is a combination across the organization. So where should organizations focus to create meaning? So if I go back to our hierarchical, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and we focus on where we identify the gaps, we talk a lot about the belonging, which is in relation to our workforce, our esteem, and self-actualization. So belonging, how does an organization create belonging as we move to the future of our workforce? And again, a question I always pose to our clients there is around, do you have the right processes and the right systems to get people from not your permanent staff involved in belonging in your organization? Your esteem. What can the future of the organization do to provide individuals esteem? And the self-actualization. How does the future of HR create a place for employees to achieve self-actualization at work? So these are the three headings where we see from our trends the gap in workforces at the moment. What I'm going to do is just share with you more detail around that first piece around belonging and the future of the workforce. Just so to reference, that is purely just in relation to timing. Obviously, the future of the organization and the future for HR are all in the report, should you want more detail on those as well. So the future of the workforce, creating a sense of belonging. The workforce is diverse. We know that now. We have alternative workforce is becoming the norm. However, we know from our statistics, we're going to show you, that is a new challenging, and we need new types of leaders to help us support in that. So as I said, alternative workforce is now mainstream. It's interesting, if you look at the statistics here, we're saying from our research that by 2020, the number of self-employed workers in the United States, for instance, is projected to triple to 42 million. 2020 is not that far away. So if we look at that number, obviously that is a number related to the US. However, I think the same theory and ratio would probably apply to the Irish context as well. 41% of our survey respondents consider this issue important or very important, and that is from an Irish perspective. But our problem starts when we look at only 8% of respondents had established processes to manage and develop alternative workforce sources. Now we're saying that this is a key issue in terms of back to our productivity and realigning our organisation to meet business demands. So the second area we want to focus on will be around the jobs to super jobs. So what is this? Well, effectively, if you think of your traditional job that we had, we're moving away to include technology. So it's back to what I referenced at the beginning. Technology is not in isolation. Technology will not be going away. It is coming fast and thick at us. So how do we integrate the human perspective and the human touch along with technology? So what we've referenced is the super job. And this is very much designing, redesigning and refocusing along with processes, along with changes about redesigning new jobs so that they have the benefit of the technology, but also the benefit of the human touch. So it is very much redesigning those. And again, just to share with you some of the trends that have come through. So 80% have indicated that they expect the use of cognitive and AI to increase or increase significantly over the next 3 years. But only 13% believe that automation will eliminate a significant number of positions. I think that's really interesting. And only 26 are ready or very ready to address technology in the workplace. So again, if you think about that reference, we're saying that's only 3 years away and only 20% of organizations are ready to address technology in the workplace. So there's a lot of work to do in terms of those reprocessing and organizing ourselves to ensure that we are ready. Instead of displacing human workers, organizations are finding humans and bots are working side by side. So this is absolutely at the core of our findings, is about the link to the human and the technology working side by side. The other key aspect of our findings is under the workforce, future of the workforce, is around leadership for the 21st century and what that means. So if we want to create a sense of belonging, back to what I said about this, idea of not just the purpose, but actually driving us into this sense of belonging, we need leaders who will be able to create this type of environment. They need new skill sets. What does that mean? Working with ambiguity, working with change, working with new types of people. So what does, again, back to what our research shows, 80% of respondents thought that 21st century leadership has unique and new requirements that are important or very important to the organization's success. So again, I think to pause there, we're saying unique and new requirements in terms of leadership skills. So again, back a question to your leadership team, back to your organizations. Are you equipping? Do you, first of all and foremost, do you know what those skill sets are? Do you know what the leadership skills are? How are you equipping not just your existing leaders, but actually your succession plans and your leaders that are in plan to come through? Because if we don't start working on those now, we will not be prepared. Yet only 30% were effectively developing leaders to meet evolving challenges. In addition, only 18% believed that they had an open and transparent model, and 37% were worried about their ability to create trust. So it's interesting, this notion of trust and belonging is coming up time and time again. And, having been at the CIPD conference last week, the keynote speaker, Rachel Botsman, talked a lot about creating this trust in a digital era. So you can see our data from both globally and locally, and external speakers are now talking about trust and belonging. So the leadership needs to be able to be more transparent, create that trust. So creating a culture which is different. So where is reinvention heading? So my question to you as HR professionals or business organizations, take a time to zoom out. Take that time. Ask yourself those critical questions. So just to refer, what are the skill sets that you need your leaders to have in 3, 5, 10 years time? What have you started designing your leadership programs, your learning programs around those skill sets? Have you got the right processes and policies to help your organization integrate more agile, diverse workforce? You need to ask yourself these questions now in terms of preparing for those, reinventing those processes and procedures. And then look ahead and define a destination. I think this is really interesting if we think about, again, where your organization wants to go. We need to focus, as we say, we're seeing a lot more data and organizations saying the focus now is on this social enterprise. So not just a focus on the business performance, the bottom line, the profit making, but integrating about the society, integrating about the trust and the teams, but with the idea of having a human touch alongside the technology. I'm conscious that this is a snippet of our report, and but I think it's a fascinating subject and something that really it's really interesting to see some of the results. So just to share with you, we have more insights on our Deloitte.com stroke human HC trends. So really would encourage you to have a look at that, and also to share with you that we have an app that you can now access and is quite accessible, and has lots of content to share with you. So thank you very much. And welcome back, David.
Thanks, Emer, for that. Look, really, really insightful. And I know it was a whistle-stop tour of the report. And what we'll do is we'll share a link of the recording today, and also a link to the report for people as well.
Great,
and just some reference to the app as well.
Yeah.
I really like the way you broke it down for the future of the workforce. And as we'll start with the leadership of the 21st century and equipping leaders, future-ready leaders. And 80% of people think it's important, but only 30% of people actually are really focusing on it, which is a gap.
Yeah.
Going from jobs to super jobs, and that hybrid of someone who's got the technical and data-driven piece, but also the soft skills of communication, collaboration, I think is interesting to see that coming forward.
Yeah.
And then also around the piece around alternative workforces, and the emergence, the estimate that 42 million in the States by 2020.
Yeah.
And I think that's that is something that's come down. We've heard a lot of conversations around that, a lot of reports around that. But I suppose kick off just the questions. We're in the questions and answers part now.
Yeah, welcome that.
Yeah. So if we're in that space and we've an alternative workforce where there's contractors, how do you bring them into your business? And so they're a key contributor, but have that sense of belonging, so they don't feel like an outsider as such. So what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think the key thing we've referenced a lot is around the processes. So do you have your contractors, or do you have your gig marketplace, or whatever that those alternative workforces is for your organization, but how are you integrating them? And the key thing I think there is around the onboarding. Okay. So we talk a lot about the employee experience, and if an individual is coming into an organization and wants to feel that sense of belonging, wants to feel a purpose and a meaning to their role, if I think the idea of onboarding and that process. So with permanent staff, we know what to do, the benefits, etc., are all usually quite clear and laid out for an organization. But I would question back to the organizations, how are you doing that same process, and how are you doing that same integration and onboarding for your non-permanent staff or employees, that actually to engage them immediately?
Okay. And are we seeing, so within that alternative workforce, are we seeing, typically you think of IT straight away, but are we seeing other functions that are increasing in that space and the workforce side?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think from our data, it shows that in terms of the responses from our respondents, sales and finance were the next two biggest areas that were most affected, which makes sense. I think if you look at what's happening around technology and the individuals, there too that link quite well after you see the IT. Yeah.
Okay, very good. I have a question from Kenneth Russell. So how important is individual adaptivity in new social contracts between the organisation and the employee during disruption?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Kenneth. It's really important. So I referenced there a little bit about the importance of the individual, and actually the more the voice of the individual has now. So I think if you think about it, they have they have to role to play, but I would put an onus on the organization in terms of how are they bringing that individual in, and how are they allowing them to play to their strengths? So if they have them on a different arrangement, how can they actually get the best out of that individual? But equally, back to what's the responsibility there for the individual, I think it's to speak up and be clear around what they want. It's back to that, the esteem in terms of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. How are you getting a value, and how are you rewarding yourself? So as an individual, try and take accountability and a question to yourself about how you want to be valued, how you want to be rewarded. That's not only monetary, just to point out, there's a lot of different ways for people, and then articulating that to your organisation.
Okay, very good. Another question in, how much do you think the individual's coping mechanisms or adaptivity figures in the new workforce?
That's a really interesting question, actually. So we don't really have data on that. I suppose, this kind of lends itself more to the individual than the organisation. But yeah, look, I think if you look at the resilience, and I reference a lot about the change, and actually what we're trying to do, our data and the research has shown leadership skills now need to account for change and adaptability. So we know that we have to adapt and upskill our leaders on that. So there's definitely a question and a gap in terms of, how many else in the organization would have those skill set. So I think it's a good question. And I think probably different organizations will differ in terms of the individuals there and their hiring process, how they might test that as well.
Okay, very good. Look, folks, I mentioned that we were going to keep it short enough, so no doubt many people are sitting watching, having their lunch. So, look, again, just feedback we've got from the webinar. A lot of people thank you for your insights.
Great.
Deemer, and thank you very much for that. Look, as I mentioned earlier, we will send on a copy of the presentation, the actual presentation, the link to the actual report, and also the recording itself. And
just to add, Dave, obviously very happy to take any further questions. I know there's a membership email address we can share with everybody, that if they want to send that in, any questions to respond after the webinar, I'm very happy to take those.
Thank you. It's membership@imi.ie. And if you do have any further questions, please do send them in to the team, and we'll share them with Emer directly when she gets back to you. So just before we go, just one last thing to mention. So we talked about leadership in the 21st century and the need to equip future leaders. So we have an information evening on the 13th of June. It's happening in the RHA gallery in Eli Place. And it'll be an opportunity for individuals and organisations to come in and have a discussion with our programme advisor team, and also our programme directors, who will give advice and a sense of the solutions we have across our accredited diplomas and also our shorter programmes. So if you are interested, please go on to our website. You can register to attend the session, or just drop in if you're around the area. So again, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen in, and we look forward to welcoming you back to IMI via digitally or coming into the campus here. So thank you again, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you.